Most people spend their entire lives reacting to what they see, hear, and experience, never questioning the nature of the world before them. They believe the outer world is solid, fixed, and absolute, as though it has authority over them. But what if I told you that what you call reality is not the cause but the effect? What you see is not creating your life, it is reflecting it. The world you experience through your senses is what we may call the 3D world. It feels real because you can touch it, measure it, and observe it. But its greatest deception is that it appears to come first. It convinces you that circumstances shape your thoughts, when in truth, your thoughts and inner states are what give birth to those very circumstances. The 3D world is nothing more than a shadow, a projection cast by the deeper reality within you. Consider this. Every experience you have ever had was filtered through your perception, your beliefs, and your assumptions. Two people can stand in the same place, face the same situation, and walk away with completely different realities. Why? Because the outer world bends itself around the inner state of the individual. It does not dictate, it mirrors, and yet most remain trapped here, endlessly trying to fix reflections instead of changing the source. They attempt to force outcomes, manipulate conditions, and struggle against what is already formed. But fighting the reflection is like trying to smooth the surface of water while ignoring the stone that was thrown into it. The disturbance has already been set in motion. The 3D world operates on delay. It is always showing you what has already been impressed upon your inner being. So when you look around and see lack, limitation, or obstacles, you are not seeing your present power. You are witnessing past assumptions made visible. This is why reacting emotionally to what you see only perpetuates the cycle. You are feeding energy into an old story, keeping it alive. To transcend this illusion, you must begin to see the outer world for what it truly is. A messenger, not a master. It is reporting back to you the contents of your consciousness, nothing more. Once you understand this, a profound shift begins to take place. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" And instead you ask, "What within me has created this?" This is where your power returns to you. When you no longer give the 3D world the authority to define your reality, you free yourself from its limitations. You are no longer bound by appearances. You are no longer controlled by circumstances. Instead, you become the one who decides what is real by choosing what to accept as true within. And here is the turning point. You must learn to remain unmoved by what you see. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it is already done. It is already the result. Your task is not to fix it, but to go beyond it, to the place where all things are created. When you withdraw your belief from appearances and place it firmly within your desired state, something extraordinary happens. The outer world, though slow and delayed, has no choice but to reorganize itself to match your inner conviction. It must, because it has no life of its own. So do not be deceived by what stands before you. It is not your enemy nor your obstacle. It is simply the echo of who you have been. And the moment you understand that, you are no longer a prisoner of the 3D world, you become its creator. Now, if the outer world is but a reflection, then we must ask ourselves, from where does the true cause arise? It is here that we begin to move beyond the limitations of the visible and enter what may be called the 5D state of consciousness. Do not be misled by the term. It is not a distant realm, nor a place you travel to. It is a shift in awareness, a deeper level of being where creation is instant, complete, and untouched by time. To live in this state is to no longer depend on the evidence of your senses. It is to understand that what is unseen is more real than what is seen. For everything that exists outwardly was first imagined, first felt, first accepted within. The 5D state is where you claim your desire as already fulfilled, not as something to be achieved, but as something that already is. Most are conditioned to believe only in what they can verify. They say, "I will believe it when I see it." But the one who understands this higher law reverses that entirely and declares, "I will see it because I have believed it." This is the difference between living as a reactor in the 3D world and becoming a creator in the 5D state. In this awareness, you no longer chase outcomes. You no longer strain or struggle to make things happen. Instead, you step into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You occupy the state of the person you desire to be, here and now, without waiting for permission from the outer world. And in doing so, you set into motion a chain of events that must, without effort, bring that state into visible form. The 5D state is rooted in certainty. not hope, not wishing, but knowing. It is a quiet, unwavering conviction that what you have accepted within is already yours. There is no anxiety here, no doubt, no need for validation. For when you truly assume something to be real, it carries a sense of naturalness, as though it has always been so. This is why imagination is not a mere fantasy. It is the creative power itself. What you consistently imagine and feel to be true becomes the blueprint that the outer world follows. When you imagine from the state of already having, rather than from longing or lack, you impress upon your deeper mind a reality that must be expressed, but this requires discipline of attention. For the world will constantly attempt to pull you back into reacting, into doubting, into measuring your progress by appearances. And if you yield to this, you step out of the 5D state and return to the illusion of separation and delay. To remain in this higher awareness, you must practice returning to your chosen state again and again. When doubt arises, you do not fight it, you simply redirect your attention. When appearances contradict your desire, you do not argue with them, you rise above them. You remember that the outer world is still catching up to what has already been established within. And as you persist in this, something remarkable occurs. The state begins to feel natural. It no longer feels like an effort or a practice. It becomes who you are. You think from it, you feel from it, you move through life from it. And when this happens, manifestation is no longer something you try to do. It is something you inevitably experience. You begin to see that everything you once sought was never outside of you. It was always waiting for you to claim it, to embody it, to accept it as your own. For the moment you truly enter this state, you are no longer becoming, you already are. Having understood that the outer world is but a reflection, and that the deeper reality lies within your own awareness, we now come to the very core of creation itself, your state of being. This is the foundation upon which all experience is built. It is not the passing thought that shapes your world, but the state you consistently occupy, the identity you silently accept as true. A state is more than a mood, it is more than a fleeting emotion. It is the sum total of what you believe yourself to be, what you feel to be natural, and what you assume to be possible for you. It is your inner position in life, and from this position all things flow. Every reaction, every decision, every circumstance is filtered through this state. You may say you desire wealth, yet if you inwardly feel uncertain, unworthy, or limited, you are not in the state of wealth. You may wish for love, yet if you feel rejected or incomplete, you are not in the state of being loved. And so the outer world faithfully reflects not your desires, but your state. It mirrors what you are conscious of being. This is why it is said that you do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. The world does not respond to your words or your wishes, it responds to your identity. It responds to the version of yourself you have accepted as real. If you remain in a state of lack, you will continue to experience situations that confirm that lack. If you dwell in a state of confidence and certainty, life will arrange itself to reflect that back to you. It cannot do otherwise. The outer world has no choice but to align with the inner state you persist in. Now this may seem confronting at first, for it places the responsibility entirely within you. But it is also the most liberating realization you can have. For if your state is the cause, then you are not at the mercy of circumstances, you are their author. You are not bound by what has been. You are free to choose what will be, by choosing who you are. To change your world, you must first change your state. Not by force, not by effort, but by quiet acceptance. You simply begin to assume that you are the person you desire to be. You think from that state, you feel from that state, you allow it to become familiar to you. At first, the mind may resist. It may point to the outer world and say, but this is not true, and yet you must understand that what it shows you is only the result of a former state. It is not evidence against your new assumption, it is confirmation of your past. Do not be moved by it, instead remain faithful to your chosen state. Return to it whenever you drift. Dwell in it as often as you can, until it begins to feel natural, until it feels like home. For once a state becomes natural to you, it is impressed upon the deeper levels of your being, and from there it must express itself outwardly. You do not need to concern yourself with how it will happen. The moment you occupy a new state, the means of its expression are already set in motion. People, events, and circumstances will rearrange themselves in ways you could not have planned. This is not your doing, it is the law in operation. Your only task is to remain true to the state you have chosen. to not waver in the face of appearances, to not return to old identities out of habit or fear. For the moment you change your state, you have already changed your reality in its cause, and what follows in the outer world is simply the unfolding of what you have already become within. For as you are within, so must you be without. Once you begin to understand that your state is the true cause of all experience, you naturally arrive at a profound realization. Effort is not the creative power you believed it to be. For so long you have been taught that to achieve anything of value, you must struggle, you must force, you must push against the world until it yields. But this belief belongs entirely to the realm of appearances. It is rooted in the illusion that the outer world holds the power. In truth, creation does not respond to effort. It responds to assumption. An assumption is not merely a thought you entertain for a moment. It is a belief you accept as true without question. It is something you no longer argue with, no longer doubt, no longer try to make happen. You simply accept it inwardly as already established. And the moment you do this, you have moved beyond effort into the realm of cause. Consider how many times you have tried to force an outcome. You may have worked harder, planned more carefully, or worried endlessly about how things would unfold. And yet, despite all that effort, the result often felt uncertain, delayed, or even unattainable. Why? Because effort, when driven by doubt, only reinforces the idea that what you desire is not yet yours. When you struggle, you are silently affirming lack. You are declaring that something is missing and must be obtained, and the outer world, being a perfect mirror, reflects that very condition back to you. But assumption operates entirely differently. It does not strive, it does not chase, it simply declares, it is done. And in that declaration, there is a quiet confidence, a stillness, a sense of completion. You are no longer reaching for something, you are resting in the knowing that it is already yours. This is the shift that must take place within you. You must move from trying to make things happen to accepting that they already have. You must release the need to control the outcome and instead claim it inwardly with certainty. Now, this does not mean you become passive in life. It means your actions are no longer driven by fear or desperation. They become natural expressions of the state you occupy. When you assume something to be true, your behavior, your decisions, and your responses begin to align with that assumption effortlessly. If you assume success, you do not question whether you are capable. You move with confidence. If you assume abundance, you do not act from scarcity, you act from sufficiency. The assumption shapes your entire way of being, and from that the outer world reorganizes itself. You may ask, how do I know if I have truly assumed it? The answer is simple, it will feel natural. There will be no inner conflict, no constant need to remind yourself, no struggle to believe. It will carry the same ease as something you have always known to be true. And if it does not yet feel natural, you persist, not through force, but through gentle return. Each time doubt arises, you do not fight it. You simply return to the assumption. You remind yourself, not with strain, but with quiet conviction, that it is already done. In time, this assumption becomes your dominant state. And once it does, the outer world must conform. It has no choice, for it is not the creator, it is the reflection. So release the need to struggle. Let go of the belief that effort is the path. For the moment you truly assume the wish fulfilled, you have already stepped into its reality, and what you accept as true within will, without effort, be made visible without. As you begin to live from assumption rather than effort, another illusion quietly begins to dissolve, the illusion of time. You have been taught to see time as a force that stands between you and what you desire, as though your dreams exist somewhere in the distance, waiting to be reached through patience, struggle, or circumstance. But this too belongs to the world of appearances. In the deeper reality of your being, there is no waiting, there is no delay. Everything you could ever desire already exists in its complete and finished form. What you call the future is not something that is being created. It is something that is already present, awaiting your recognition. And what determines your experience of it is not time, but your state. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are not preparing for something to happen, you are stepping into a reality that already is. You are aligning yourself with a version of life that exists now, even if it has not yet appeared in the outer world. And from that moment forward, the movement of time is no longer a barrier, but a bridge. This is where many become discouraged, for they look to the outer world for immediate confirmation. They expect that the moment they change within, the world must instantly reflect it, And when it does not, they begin to doubt. They begin to question whether they have done it correctly, whether it is truly working. But in doing so, they return to the very state they are trying to leave behind. You must understand that the outer world unfolds according to its own rhythm. It is a delayed expression of what has already been accepted within. The moment you impress a new state upon your being, the process of its expression begins. But just as a seed takes time to grow into a tree, your assumption moves through a series of unseen arrangements before it becomes visible. This is not a reason for doubt, it is a reason for trust. For if you truly knew that what you have assumed is already yours, would you be concerned with when it appears? Would you measure its progress by what you see in the moment? Or would you rest in the certainty that it must come to pass because it is already done? To live in this understanding is to detach from time as a source of pressure. You no longer feel the need to rush, to force, or to constantly check for results. You move through life with a quiet assurance, knowing that everything is unfolding perfectly, even when it is not yet visible. And equally, you detach from circumstances, for circumstances are nothing more than the current expression of past states. They are not fixed, not final, not permanent. They are fluid, ever-changing, and entirely subject to the state you now choose to occupy. When you react to circumstances, you give them power. You treat them as something real and unchangeable. But when you understand their nature, you no longer feel compelled to fight them or escape them. You simply rise above them, knowing they are already in the process of changing. This is the discipline to remain faithful to your inner knowing, regardless of what the outer world presents. To stand firm in your assumption even when appearances suggest otherwise. Not through force, but through understanding. For the one who lives in this awareness is no longer bound by time or circumstance. They are no longer waiting for life to happen, they are allowing it to unfold from within. And when you reach this point, you will see that what once felt distant begins to draw near, what once seemed impossible begins to take shape, and what once required effort begins to arrive with ease. Not because time has passed, but because you have transcended it. For when you know it is already yours, there is nothing left to wait for. And so, having seen through the illusion of the outer world, having understood the nature of consciousness, the power of your state, the quiet authority of assumption, and the freedom from time, we arrive at the most essential step of all, embodying the version of yourself who already is what you desire to be. This is where everything becomes real, not in theory but in experience. For it is not enough to understand these ideas intellectually. You must become them. You must move beyond thinking about the life you want and begin thinking from it. You must feel from it. You must live inwardly as though it is already true. Ask yourself, who would you be if your desire were already fulfilled? How would you think? How would you feel? How would you carry yourself through the world? These are not questions to entertain lightly. They are the doorway into your transformation. For the version of you who already has what you seek is not waiting in the future. That version exists now, as a state of consciousness available to you in this very moment. And the only thing that separates you from it is your willingness to assume it. To embody this version of yourself means to adopt its identity fully. It means you no longer look at life through the lens of lack or limitation. You no longer define yourself by past experiences or current circumstances. Instead, you define yourself by what you have chosen to be. This requires a quiet but firm decision. You decide that you are no longer the person who struggles, who doubts, who waits. You decide that you are the one who already is. And having made that decision, you begin to align your inner world with it. Your thoughts begin to reflect this new identity. Your inner conversations change. Where there was once uncertainty, there is now confidence. Where there was once longing, there is now fulfillment. You do not ask, will this happen? You move from the knowing that it has already happened. And as you persist in this, your feelings begin to follow. There is a sense of ease, a sense of completeness, a quiet satisfaction that does not depend on external validation. You are no longer seeking confirmation from the world because you have already confirmed it within yourself. This is what it means to truly embody the state. It is not an act you put on for a moment. It is a way of being you return to again and again until it becomes natural. Until it feels so familiar that you cannot imagine being any other way. And when this happens, something profound takes place. Your outer world begins to shift, not because you have forced it, but because it must reflect who you are. People respond differently. Opportunities appear. Circumstances rearrange themselves in ways that seem almost effortless. But understand this clearly. It is not the outer change that matters. It is the inner transformation. For once you have become this version of yourself, you are no longer dependent on what appears. You have already claimed your identity, and that is the true fulfillment. The world is simply catching up. So do not wait for evidence before you believe. Do not wait for permission before you become. Step into it now. Think from it now. Feel it now. Live it now. For the moment you fully embody the one you desire to be, you are no longer on the path. You have arrived.